one of the most controversial artifacts in history. The Shroud of Turin is a burial cloth that's imprinted with what many believe is the actual image of Jesus after his crucifixion.
For decades, scientists argued over the shroud's age with a carbon dating test pointing to the Middle Ages. But everyone, believers and skeptics alike, agreed on one thing: it was a static, unchanging image.
That the Shroud of Turin, which again is currently in Italy, but is indeed 2,000 years old. We believe it to be the very burial cloths of Jesus of Nazareth. Keep in mind,
that all changed last month. An AI, comparing scans taken decades apart, found something that shouldn't be possible: microscopic movement. And it has forced a terrifying new question: what kind of technology or what kind of event could do that? The moment scientists went pale. The debate has raged for hundreds of years, pitting faith against forensics and history against science. Skeptics point to its sudden appearance in the 14th century with no prior documented history. Believers point to a list of scientific properties that seem to defy any attempt at replication. The argument has always been binary. It's either a 1st century artifact or it's a 14th century fraud. But all arguments on both sides were based on one single, unspoken assumption: that the shroud, whatever it is a static, finished object, an artifact from the past, an image that was made and then, for good or ill, was finished. That assumption was just shattered. In a stunning new paper reportedly leaked from the Padua Institute for Digital Archaeology, researchers have turned a new kind of artificial intelligence loose on the shroud, and it found something that has left scientists, to put it mildly, completely stunned. The AI detected movement. Now, this isn't movement like a video. It's something far stranger, something that shouldn't be possible, and it's a finding that threatens to upend the entire debate. The thing nobody tells you about AI is that it can see patterns that the human eye, and even our most sensitive instruments, could never hope to catch. It operates on a level of data analysis that is, quite frankly, alien to us. This new AI, nicknamed Chronos, is not just a simple program. It's a terabyte-scale deep learning pattern recognition matrix. It was designed to do the impossible: digitally restore ancient damaged artifacts by cross-referencing millions of data points from chemical composition to thread-by-thread weave analysis. The Chronos AI was tasked with a simple job: compare the high-resolution photographs taken by the Shroud of Turin research project team in 1978 with new ultra-high-definition gigapixel scans taken just last year. The goal was to map degradation, to see how the cloth had changed over 40-plus years in its inert gas case. It was a simple conservation project. But Chronos found something else. It found a data ghost. The AI, in its process, digitally separated the two main components of the image: the faint scorched body image and the dark reddish bloodstains. This is where the anomaly appeared. The AI discovered a microscopic but consistent discrepancy. The bloodstains were not perfectly aligned with the wounds on the body image beneath them. They were shifted by mere microns, a tiny fraction of the width of a human hair. The AI flagged this as relative image blood displacement, a term that didn't even exist until the AI invented it. A source inside the Padua Institute, speaking anonymously, described the moment. The room was silent. The team thought it was a calibration error. They ran the analysis again, and again, and again. Each time, the AI returned the same result. The shift was real. That, reportedly, is when the scientists went pale. Why? Because this finding defies all logical explanations. You see, for years, the leading scientific theory about the blood, proposed by the original STURP team, was that it came first. The blood, which is real human blood soaked into the cloth from a physical bleeding body. Then something, a burst of light, a chemical reaction, an unknown energy source, created the body image afterward. The new AI finding seems to support this, but with a terrifying twist. The movement isn't a random smear, it's not a smudge. The AI models suggest it's a temporal artifact. The shift is so precise, so uniform across the entire body, that it looks like the body itself was in a different state or even a different position at the exact millisecond the image was formed compared to when the blood was deposited. The leaked paper supposedly titles this section, "Evidence of Temporal Dissonance in Static Relics." This one finding blows every known forgery theory out of the water. Forget painting, forget acid etching, forget rubbing a bas-relief. A medieval artist couldn't have done this. You can't paint bloodstains, then use a, still unknown, scorching method to create a perfect three-dimensional negative image underneath it, and then add in a microscopic movement signature, a deliberate misalignment of mere microns, that would only be detectable by an artificial intelligence 500 years later. It's impossible. It's inconceivable. This new data suggests the shroud didn't just capture a static moment. It captured a moment of transition, a process, an event. This AI anomaly doesn't solve the mystery, it makes it deeper. It forces us to look back at the one artifact that science has never been able to explain or replicate. What many overlooked is that the AI didn't just find a clue, it may have found the core of the entire mystery. The AI finding has broken every theory. But to understand why, you need to know what exactly it's breaking. Secrets of the 1978 study. To understand why the AI's movement finding is such a bombshell, we have to look at what scientists already knew. The Shroud of Turin isn't just a maybe mystery. It's not a blurry photo of Bigfoot. It's a collection of scientific impossibilities, a wow factor artifact that shouldn't exist, regardless of its age. Its known history begins around 1357 in the small town of Liry, France. A respected knight named Geoffrey de Charny put it on display, claiming it was the true burial shroud. The problem? He had no proof of where it came from before that. There is a total historical blackout for 1,300 years. The Catholic Church itself was immediately skeptical. The local bishop, Pierre Darcy, wrote a scathing memo to the Pope, calling it a clever painting and a work of cunning sleight of hand designed to fleece pilgrims. And so, for hundreds of years, it was treated as a powerful but likely fake relic. It was bought, sold, and passed down until it ended up in the hands of the House of Savoy, the future kings of Italy. In 1532, it nearly perished. A fire broke out in the chapel in Chambéry, France, where it was stored. The silver casket holding it began to melt. Drops of molten silver at over 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit burned through the folded cloth, leaving the pattern of dark symmetrical burn marks we still see today. The local Poor Clare nuns, in a desperate act of preservation, patched these holes with triangular pieces of cloth and doused the smoldering relic in water. The shroud was damaged, scorched, and stained, but it had survived. For 400 years, that's all it was. A damaged, patched, and controversial relic. A curiosity for believers, a fraud for historians. Then came May 28, 1898. The shroud was on public display, and an amateur Italian photographer named Secondo Pia was given permission to take the first ever photograph of it. He set up his heavy, primitive equipment battling the low light of the cathedral. He took the picture and went back to his darkroom. This is the moment the mystery was truly born. As he submerged the glass plate negative in the chemical bath, watching the image slowly resolve, he must have nearly fainted. He later described a feeling of holy terror, because staring back at him from the negative was not the faint, ghostly image he saw in the church. It was a perfect, crystal clear, and majestic positive portrait of a man. His features were defined. His expression was one of serene, solemn dignity. This was the first wow factor, and it was a big one. The shroud itself was a photographic negative. The image on the cloth was inverted, something that makes no sense centuries before the invention of photography. This discovery changed everything. It proved in one instant that the shroud was not a simple painting. No artist in history, not even the great masters, has ever painted in negative. The human brain simply doesn't work that way. This single photo launched a century of intense scientific study. The biggest study of all happened in 1978. The Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, was formed. This was not a religious group. This was a team of over 40 top-tier American scientists, physicists, chemists, pathologists, and imaging specialists from places like NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Los Alamos National Labs, and the U.S. Air Force Academy. They were given unprecedented access by the Vatican. For 5 days, 120 straight hours, they ran every non-destructive test they could imagine on the cloth. They were believers, atheists, and agnostics, and they all wanted one thing: the truth. What they found is the reason the Shroud is still a mystery today. Their findings, published in numerous peer-reviewed journals, created a portrait of an object that simply cannot exist. First, the image is impossibly superficial. The STURP team found that the image, the face, the hands, the body, is not paint. It's not dye, it's not a stain, it's a chemical change in the linen fibers themselves, a dehydration or scorch like a faint yellowing or aging, and it sits only on the very top microfibers. The image's depth is about 200 nanometers. To put that in perspective, a single human hair is about 70,000 nanometers thick. The image is thinner than a particle of smoke, so superficial that it doesn't even penetrate the smallest thread. If you took a single fiber from an image area, the image exists only on its crown, the part that would have faced a body. No paintbrush, no liquid, no rubbing can create an image this delicate and this specific. Second, the blood is real, but the image is not. This is a crucial distinction. The scientists used X-ray fluorescence, ultraviolet spectroscopy, and chemical tests. They confirmed the dark red stains are, in fact, real human blood. It contains albumin, porphyrin, and other components of whole blood. But here's the catch. They found no pigment, no paint, no binders anywhere else on the cloth. The body image and the blood are two totally different things, made of different substances. Furthermore, the STURP team also found that the blood was on the cloth before the body image was formed. How? The blood stains block the image-forming process. Underneath the blood, there is no body image. The blood fibers are simply coated in blood, as you would expect. The image fibers next to them are scorched. This is a critical detail. It means a body, bleeding, was laid in the cloth. And then some other event happened that created the body image without disturbing the blood that was already there. The blood also contains extremely high levels of bilirubin, a waste product produced when the liver breaks down red blood cells, which is consistent with someone who died under extreme physical trauma or torture. Third, and this is the biggest wow factor of all, the image contains three-dimensional data. This was discovered by two physicists from the U.S. Air Force Academy, Dr. Eric Jumper and Dr. John Jackson, using a VP8 image analyzer. This was a high-tech device NASA used to map the surfaces of planets like Mars from two-dimensional photos. It interprets shading as vertical height. When they fed a photo of a normal painting or a photograph into it, they got a distorted, jumbled mess as the lighting and shading were arbitrary. But when they fed in the photo of the Shroud, a perfect three-dimensional high-relief image of the man popped up on the screen. This proved, unequivocally, that the image was not made by an artist. The image's darkness corresponds perfectly and mathematically to the distance the cloth would have been from a body. The tip of the nose, which would have been touching the cloth, is darkest. The cheeks, set further back, are lighter. The recesses of the eyes, further still, are lighter yet. This 3D information is encoded all over the body. You can see the scourge marks rising in 3D, showing the welts on the skin. You can see the rigor mortis in the man's chest. You can see the specific cap-like pattern of wounds on the scalp, not a simple crown of thorns. No artist could have possibly calculated this. No known forgery method, a heated statue, a powdered rubbing, and acid etching has ever been able to replicate this 3D encoding. So the STURP team left in 1978 with a paradox. They had a cloth with a 3D encoded, superficial, non-pigment image and real traumatic AB-type blood that was applied before the image. They had in their hands a scientific impossibility. They had no explanation for how it was formed. Their official summary was blunt. No pigments, paints, dyes, or stains have been found. The image is the result of some as yet unknown process. And this is where the new AI movement finding comes crashing in. That 3D data is the body. The blood is the fluid. The AI just detected that the 3D map and the blood map are not perfectly aligned. This suggests the blood was left by a physical static body and the 3D image was zapped onto the cloth by an energy source that was moving or changing relative to that body. To put it mildly, it's a mystery wrapped in a paradox, which is itself wrapped in an enigma. But if the science is this impossible, how did the entire world become convinced it was a fake? The vanillin clue. The STURP team's 1,978 findings were a bombshell. They had a scientifically impossible artifact. Their data pointed strongly toward authenticity, or at least toward a mystery that science could not solve. But science had one more card to play. The one test that STURP was not allowed to perform: radiocarbon dating. This was the one test that could end the debate forever. Carbon-14 is a radioactive isotope that all living things absorb from the atmosphere. When an organism, like a flax plant used to make linen, perishes, it stops absorbing, and the C14 begins to decay at a fixed, known rate, its half-life. By measuring how much C14 is left, scientists can tell with high accuracy how old it is. In 1988, 10 years after STURP, the Vatican finally agreed. The pressure from the scientific community was immense. In a highly publicized and scrutinized event, a small postage stamp-sized piece of the shroud was cut. This sample was then divided and sent to 3 of the world's top C14 dating labs: Oxford University, the University of Arizona, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. The labs worked blind, unaware of each other's results. The results were to be a final scientific end to the mystery. And they were. The labs all came back with the same devastating answer. With 95% certainty, the linen of the Shroud of Turin was harvested between the years 1260 and 1390 AD. The news hit the world like a thunderclap. It was a medieval fake. The dates lined up perfectly with its first appearance in history in Liry, France, around 1357. The case was closed. The media announced the death of the Shroud mystery. It was declared officially to be a brilliant but ultimately human-made forgery. It was the gotcha moment for skeptics and a crushing, humiliating blow to believers and many of the STURP scientists whose data seemed to say the opposite. But as with everything related to the Shroud, not all things are what they seem. Almost immediately, scientists, including some on the C14 dating teams, began to question the results. Not the test itself, but the sample they were given. The thing nobody tells you about that 1,988 test is that the sample was taken from the worst possible place. It was cut from a single corner right next to one of the main patches sewn on by the Poor Clare nuns after the 1532 fire. This was the area of the cloth that had been handled the most, held up by bishops for display for centuries. And it was right next to a water-stained, burned, and clearly repaired section. This led to the invisible reweaving hypothesis, first proposed by researchers Sue Benford and Joe Marino. The theory suggests that the corner the labs tested was not, in fact, the original first-century linen. It was a section that had been damaged, perhaps in the fire, perhaps by centuries of handling, and then expertly rewoven in the Middle Ages by the nuns to repair the cloth. This French patch theory would mean the labs dated a medieval repair, not the main shroud. This idea was controversial for years, dismissed as wishful thinking, until a key STURP scientist, a renowned chemist named Ray Rogers, came out of retirement to test it. In 2005, just before he died, Rogers published a paper that blew the debate wide open again. He had managed to get threads from inside the C14 sample area, leftover material, and compared them to threads from the main body of the shroud. What he found was shocking. The threads were chemically and structurally different. The C14 sample area contained cotton, which isn't found in the rest of the shroud, which is pure linen. It was coated in a plant gum, possibly to dye the new threads to match the old cloth's aged sepia color. But his biggest wow factor was vanillin. Vanillin is a chemical compound that comes from lignin, a part of the flax plant. Over centuries, vanillin breaks down and disappears at a predictable rate. It's the timekeeper of linen. Rogers tested the main body of the shroud far from the sample area. It had no detectable vanillin. This is exactly what you'd expect from a cloth that is thousands of years old. Then he tested a thread from the C14 sample. It was full of vanillin. This proved to him that the sample they dated was chemically different and much, much younger than the rest of the cloth. The C14 test, he declared, was valid, but the sample was not. This, combined with other theories, has thrown the C14 date into serious doubt. Some scientists argue the 1532 fire created a bioplastic coating of bacteria and carbon that polluted the sample and made it test younger. Others have proposed a neutron bombardment theory, that the same event that created the image released a burst of neutrons, which would have collided with the linen's nitrogen atoms, creating new C14 and making the cloth test artificially young. Newer, non-destructive dating methods like X-ray scattering and spectroscopy have since been used. While also controversial, these methods have returned dates much, much older, many in line with the 1st century. So we have a total paradox: an impossible image with 3D data, and a conclusive C14 date that is now widely believed to be wrong, or at least fatally flawed by a contaminated sample. This is the chaotic mess the new AI movement finding has landed in. If the C14 date is right, then a medieval forger not only invented 3D negative image scorching, but also invented a way to encode temporal movement. That's absurd. But if the C14 date is wrong and the shroud is from the 1st century, then the AI just found a data ghost of the most famous event in human history. The AI detected movement. So, what does it mean? The master forger. We are now left with a complete and total paradox. The Shroud of Turin cannot be a medieval forgery, and yet it cannot be real. It defies both conclusions. The C14 dating says medieval. The chemistry, physics, and 3D data say impossible. And now this new, and we must say still unverified, report about an AI detecting movement has thrown a grenade into the middle of the debate. People watching this are looking for a mystery, and to put it mildly, this is the greatest mystery of all. So let's talk down to earth. Let's look at what this all means. Are we missing a key detail? The thing is, there are only 3 possibilities left, and 2 of them are terrifying. Possibility 1. The AI is wrong. This is the simplest, most scientific, and most boring answer. The AI, Chronos, is just a machine. It's an algorithm. It's only as good as the data it's fed. It was comparing 2 vastly different types of images: a 1978 analog photograph captured on film and a 2024 digital gigapixel scan captured by a CCD sensor. The movement it detected, those micron-level shifts, could be nothing more than a data artifact, a sensor mapping mismatch, a rounding error, a glitch in the code created by comparing 2 different technologies with different resolutions, different lenses, and different distortions. This is what's known as algorithmic apophenia, the AI's tendency to see a meaningful pattern in random noise, just as humans see a face in the clouds. In this scenario, the scientists didn't go pale with discovery. They went pale with frustration, realizing their data was corrupted and their expensive project had yielded a false positive. In this case, nothing changes. We are left with the same old mystery, and the AI report will be quietly buried. Possibility 2. The C14 date is right and the forger was a super genius. This is the theory that strains belief to its breaking point. Let's assume the C14 date of 1260 to 1390. AD is 100% correct. Let's assume Ray Rogers was wrong. This means a human being in the Middle Ages created the shroud. But this wasn't just some monk with a paintbrush. This person would have to have been a genius on a level that makes Leonardo da Vinci look like a child. And he would have had to live 200 years before da Vinci. This forger would have needed to be a master anatomist, with a perfect understanding of the human body, rigor mortis, and the effects of crucifixion. Be a master hematologist, somehow acquiring real, human, B-type blood from a trauma victim with high bilirubin and applying it to the cloth before the image. Invent photography, or at least the concept of a photographic negative, centuries before its time. Invent a way to encode perfect 3-dimensional data into a 2-dimensional cloth, a concept we only discovered with NASA computers. Invent a scorching method that only penetrates linen to a depth of 200 nanometers, a feat we still cannot replicate today. Invent a way to do all of this without leaving a single trace of pigment, paint, dye, or binder. And now, thanks to the new AI, we have to add one more item to this impossible resume. 7. He had to invent a way to encode a temporal artifact of movement, deliberately shifting the image and blood data by mere microns, just to fool an artificial intelligence he couldn't have possibly imagined 500 years in his future. This is not a forger. This is a time traveler. This is a super being with access to technology we still don't possess. This possibility is, frankly, more unbelievable than the Shroud being real. It replaces one miracle with an even bigger one. Possibility 3. The C14 date is wrong and the AI is right. This is the final mind-bending option. This is the one that changes the world. In this scenario, the C14 date is wrong. The sample was a medieval patch, or it was contaminated by the fire, or it was altered by a radiation event. The real Shroud is 2,000 years old, and the AI is right. It did detect movement. But what is that movement? It's the wow factor that has been hinted at for decades, the resurrection hypothesis. So what is the Shroud of Turin? For centuries, we've been told it's either the most sacred relic in human history or the most brilliant forgery ever conceived. We hear about painters, acid washes, and medieval artists. But what if the answer is something far more shocking? What if the answer isn't art, and it isn't faith, but physics? There is a theory, one favored by many hard-nosed physicists who have studied the Shroud and walked away completely baffled. This theory isn't a religious one, it's a physical one. It states that the image was created by a single massive instantaneous burst of radiation and light. An explosion of energy that came from the body wrapped inside the cloth. Imagine a flashbulb with the power of a small sun, but lasting only a fraction of a second, a 40 billionth of a second, by some calculations. This burst of energy was so intense, so precise, that it scorched or imprinted the very top layer of the linen fibers. We're talking about a depth of mere microns, 200 nanometers to be exact. This is why it's not a painting. No brush, no paint, no acid could only affect the topmost layer of the fibers, leaving the fibers underneath untouched. This is the only theory that explains all the impossible facts at once. The total superficiality, the precise 3D data hidden in the image, and the bizarre nature of it being a perfect photographic negative. It's a radiation burn theory. Now this is where it gets really interesting. If you know anything about the Shroud, you're probably thinking, but wait, what about the carbon-14 dating? In 1988, scientists famously tested the cloth and declared it a medieval forgery, dating it between 1260 and 1390 AD. Case closed, right? Wrong. The radiation theory blows that conclusion out of the water. It doesn't just ignore the C14 data, it provides a stunning explanation for why that data is dead wrong. If this event was a neutron burst, an explosion of subatomic particles, it would have released a flood of neutrons. These neutrons would have shot through the cloth, bombarding the stable nitrogen-14 atoms that already existed in the linen. And what happens when a neutron hits a nitrogen-14 atom? Basic physics. It transmutes. It forces that nitrogen to turn into, you guessed it, new fresh carbon-14. This process would have reset the cloth's internal carbon clock. The 1988 test wasn't measuring the original age of the linen, it was measuring the massive dose of new C14 created during the energy event. It made the cloth test artificially, deceptively young. So what is it? A simple computer error? A forgery so brilliant it borders on the supernatural? Or is the Shroud of Turin a snapshot of an event that defies our understanding of time and space? The AI may have just given us the data, but we are the ones who have to live with the answer. Let us know your theory in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.